Hey everyone, I'm Danny and welcome to Wizardry Workshop. If you can't tell by the uniform I'm wearing right now, this is a Ghostbusters DIY. It's the second in my Proton Pack series, and this is for the particle thrower, or neutrona wand, or particle wand, or proton thrower. Either way, whatever you want to call it, this piece was missing in the Proton Pack build because it is just a monster of a project on its own. I do apologize for the very lengthy time in between. This is a very long video. If you are not going to put lights in yours or you're not interested in the lights and you just want to build it for how it looks, you can skip a ton of this video because a lot of it is how to put the lighting together. Check out the description box for a list of all the supplies you're going to need to make this DIY, as well as the free downloadable templates. And let's get started. First, of course, we will need to print the templates, and these are the 11x17 version. I do have 8.5x11, which are just kind of cut up a little bit smaller, and you kind of have to piece them together a bit more. And as you can see, if you did the Proton Pack, you'll notice that there are quite a bit less templates. This is all there is. So this is definitely going to be a little bit easier, probably less time consuming than the Proton Pack. Now, on top of that, I do have some reference images. All of these pictures that I pieced together here came from the Ghostbusters reference library.com. The next thing we're gonna need is cardboard. Not quite as much cardboard as last time though. Let's start off with the gun body. Trim these pieces out real quick. Tape this onto our cardboard, and the solid black lines are where we cut. The dotted lines are where we score so that we can make our folds. These kind of like semi-transparent pieces, that's showing you where pieces go. The solid black shapes in here are going to be cut out, but we'll save that for a little bit later. Tape this down onto our cardboard. Use a ruler and X-Acto knife to do all these little straight solid black lines. And I realized after I made a few cuts that it would be a little easier to do the scoring first instead of last, so that's what I'm doing right now. For the scoring, I am using my Cricut scoring tool, and with all of our cuts made, we should be able to pop this out of the cardboard. And now you can see we have basically a perfect copy of this piece. And I'm going to save this template now because it's going to help me with where to place certain holes and other things that I'm going to cut out, as well as the pieces that we're going to attach. Anything that you scored, just go ahead and reinforce a little fold. You can see that it's starting to take shape right here, but we are missing the other side. So again, we'll do that same exact thing with this piece. So now you can see we have this side and we have this side. And if I kind of form them into the shape they're supposed to be and put them together, you can see this is the gun body, but it's going to look a lot better, don't worry. And to get these shapes cut out, I am going to be using my swivel cutting blade. So basically, it's almost like you're drawing with the blade and it's cutting as you go. Now at the moment we should be here. So we got these three cut out. We've got that rectangle cut out. Now, as for these two little holes, they're actually supposed to be for little tiny toggle switches, but I have plans for that. I'm actually going to put one bigger toggle switch in there. So I'm going to skip these holes and make my own little custom thing. But if you want it to be completely accurate, you're supposed to use two small toggles. Now, as for this oval here, I'm just going to make a cut in the middle with my X-Acto knife. And then I'll just use my scissors to cut this the best as I can. So I have cut out what I want to cut out. As I said, these I'm not doing, but just looking at it, you could probably just use a quick hole punch on those two. It's about the right size for that. But before we go any further, I want to make sure the tube that I'm going to use fits properly in here. And it does. So you can see right here, it fits as it's supposed to. So instead of being straight like this, it's going to be at an angle. So this tube is about 1 1/8. This is the size of tube you want. And this is just like a shipping tube. With those cut out, you can bring out the cardboard piece that we cut out Lay your template on top. If you're worried about things moving around, you can use a paper clamp. And now it's just a matter of tracing that. We're using that as a template. I'm just going to fill in these shapes here, fill in or trace this rectangle here, and I'll do the same thing with this oval. If you're using the two small toggles, you would also trace or fill those in, and we can see exactly where we need to cut. So now you can see I've got these cut out, but they're not perfect. If you take something like what I'm using right here is my awl for bookbinding, but if you take something like that and you sort of smooth out those edges, it starts to look a lot better. You could use a toothpick for this, whatever you have handy, but you know, that's going to be fine, especially from a distance. No one's going to notice the imperfections. So now we can start putting these two pieces together. So I'll just get my hot glue gun started over here. One more thing to note is this tab right here folds under. So if you have overlap with that kind of like grill right here, like I do, just go ahead and cut off part of that end of that tab. So we'll just start right here with this flap, and we're just going to put some hot glue, and then we're going to tuck it underneath, and then we'll hold it there for a second to let it dry. And now we can continue on to this smaller flap right here. And fold the top over onto that. So now we should be right here. Now we continue on to the flap on the other side of the top. Fold this piece over, and we should end up with a shape that looks like this. And now we need to do the other half. So for this one, it's more just kind of like gluing it in to this half. Right here where this angle is going to glue in right here. So we are going to have to trim that one down too, so that it doesn't overlap our hole here for our tube. The bottom flap here is going to glue into the front, which I'm calling this the front right here. And then this tab we just trimmed down is going to glue right here. The top part right here is going to go right there. And then this part right here in the back is actually going to glue right there. But let's just do those 3 flaps first. So this is going to be the front, the angled front, and the top. So that's what we're going to call it, just to make this a little bit easier. So I will start with the front and the angled front, and these are going to glue in right here to the front, and then the angled front. We also have another flap right here that goes in the top, so we're going to do that one while the glue is a little bit wet and not like cooled off yet, just so that we can tuck that in and get that glued in. You can flip it over, reach into the top of it if you need to. So if you take it from here and turn it around, you have this back part and there's a flap right there. We need to tuck that in. So I'm going to tuck it in and fold it over on itself, just like this. You can see that that flap is now, we fold it over and in. So on this side of the flap, we want to put a little glue and then fold it over to this side right here and just hold it down and let it cool. So now we should be here. And then if we look at the back of it, which would be here, we have a flap right here. And that piece is going to fold down, and this flap right here is going to glue over to this edge right there. Now, as you can see, there is one last flap here, or actually 2 last flaps, but one last piece that is going to fold over, and this is going to tuck in. I think the easiest way to do this is to start with the longer flap and then fold this long piece over and tuck it, and then hold the flap in there, and then we can take this, turn it over, and we have access to that smaller flap right here. Just like before, we're going to glue it from the inside. And then all we have left to do is the bottom, which doesn't appear to be long enough. Oh no, I messed up. Oh my gosh, okay. So I messed up by about an inch or so, maybe a little less than an inch there. I'll fix the templates for you guys, but I'm going to have to fix that myself. I think what I did was I measured it, and then the flap was on this side when it should have been outside of that. That's what it looks like. Oh my god, I can't believe I did that. But anyways, we're not going to close it up yet anyway. We would save that part because we need to be able to get in to this to put in our lights and other things. So really, yeah, I mean, this still works. Sorry for the mistake. I did go ahead and fix that bottom flap. This is what it should look like right here. And it'll just tuck in like that. Okay, so now if you look at this back part of it right here, or I guess this would technically be the front and this would be the back, but you can see there's no flap or anything holding that together. So we're just going to take some hot glue and put it right there. Just like that, and then we'll wait for that to dry while we hold it. Now you probably know this if you watched the Proton Pack video. We're actually going to do that same hot glue thing around all of the imperfect edges, and then we're going to paint it to make it look like welding. Now let's go ahead and start on these smaller pieces right here. Just like before, we'll go ahead and trim these pieces out. These pieces are kind of some random pieces that we will use later, but we don't need them right now, so we'll set those aside. And these two pieces actually go on the barrel of this thing. They're going to kind of like go around the barrel. As you can see, it fits pretty much perfectly right there. So we'll do those next, but first let's focus on these two pieces. Just like we did before, we'll tape these down onto cardboard, and then we'll do our cutting and scoring. Okay, now with both of these cut out, I'm also going to save these again because there are a couple places where we need some little pieces. But we'll go ahead and fold these and glue them together. I'm going to show you how each one of these is folded. This one here, it just folds into a big rectangular piece. So, I mean, this folds over like that. And then this piece right here is going to fold down to close it up, and this tucks in. Just like that, and it does that on both sides. It's the exact same on both sides, and it should just be a little kind of rectangular square piece. Just use some hot glue to get that done. So we end with a little rectangular block, and that rectangular block is actually going to go right here, and we're just going to glue it on. So it should look like this once it's glued on to the gun box. There's a little overlap out this way. And next we move on to this piece. So again, we'll just fold it around so that it's a little bit, it's kind of like long. On this side, it's very easy. These three flaps are going to fold in and then tuck into the bottom, and that's basically the bottom of the block. But the top of the block is a bit of a different shape. So it has this piece, as you can see, it's almost like a roof of a house or something. So these are going to tuck in and fold in like that. And then this is going to tuck and fold in like that. And then it's going to look like almost like a little house when we're done with it. So we'll just glue those on. And if we bring out our reference images, you can see where this piece goes as well. You can see it right here in this image. I've got the tube in there just for reference. That's like the handle part, but I'll take that out, and you can see the house-shaped piece we just made is going to go right there. So I just got out the plans and started looking through and realized I made a mistake. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you guys what to do if you make a mistake too. So I put this piece on a little too early, and I closed up the bottom of it a little too early as well. So this is what you need to do if you have done something like that. I've got this little craft handsaw. So I'm just going to literally saw the piece off. It should be easy, just it's going through the hot glue right now. And then we need to open the bottom of it back up again. For this, I'm just going to cut it open and I'll glue it shut when I'm done. Hopefully that's the last mistake I make. This piece actually is what powers on the gun. So we need to be able to have a switch on there, which is why I had to take it apart just now. So let's pull out Sean Bishop's plans. You can see it does have a switch on it. My switch is actually bigger than that. I couldn't find teeny tiny switches. So here is the toggle switch that I got if you want to get the exact same one that I did, but any toggle switch like this should work. So this is going to go right here. We need to remember which way is on and which way is off because I do want this to be a functional thing. So I'll just take a little bit of my blue tape and I'm going to mark the side that on should be facing. This piece should screw off and then the on-off switch indicator should come off. And so now we know it needs to be right here. So now we just need to make a hole wide enough for this to come up through. Since we're using cardboard, this should be pretty easy. I'm just going to sort of eyeball where I want this to go. It doesn't have to be perfect. So that'll go right here. So I've just popped a hole in that with my awl, and then I'm going to use a pencil or a pen, whichever you have, you can use to make the hole wider. And it looks like we need that hole to be even wider. Just make sure it's going to fit and go through on the inside. Okay, yep, that works. If we put this on here and screw this in, everything should work out. So looks good. But now we need to take this out of there. In fact, I am going to actually undo a little bit more of this. This might actually be easier to do before you actually put this thing completely together. So sorry for the mistakes, but I don't really want to redo the piece. So we're just going to go with it. I've also made a few holes on the side of it right here so that I can run some wires through, and then the wires will go into this piece. This is where it's going to sit. These holes, I also need to make them in the side of this so that the wires can come through. Now the holes are here, and they line up. Right now I have the switch in there, and I'm just kind of cleaning up any of the little pieces of cardboard that might get in the way of screwing the nut back onto it. Now I can put this piece back where it was, and then I can screw this piece, this nut back onto it. There. So now we will have an on-off switch. We will need some wiring. So I bought this wiring, which comes with red and black wire connected to it together. I thought that would probably make things easier and keep it nice and clean. We do need to strip these wires, which means we need to expose the inside wire. You can use needle nose pliers. Most of them have a cutting part. Very lightly grasp it with that, but not all the way through, and then pull, and then you should be able to get to the wire on the inside. Now I'll get out my Grunnings drills set for this. I need a Phillips head screwdriver just to loosen these screws up a bit so I can get the wires in there. So we'll put one wire on one side and one on the other. Just twist the wire around and then screw this back in tight, and it should hold. I am going to have some lights inside of mine. As for special effects like sound effects and stuff like that, not quite yet, but I want the option to add them in the future. Now our wiring is in there pretty good. I'm not quite sure how far the wiring needs to go, so I'm just going to cut off a pretty good length of it just to be safe. And that will go through one of these. I guess I didn't need 4. I could have gone with 2 of those probably, because there's only a button and a switch. So there's one wire. That's for the power. And then there's going to be a button here that when you push it, it should make the lights come on. Now that we have all this in a place where it fits, I went ahead and took mine out I marked it blue where the on position is, just so that I could remember, and the red wire is the one that's connected to the top where on is. Eventually we are going to take the on off piece off of there, and it's going to say activate at the top. We are going to have to put more lights and wires inside of here. Now that we have our holes in here and everything's looking good, we'll go ahead and paint these black. And just so I don't get myself all messy, I like to wear gloves while I do this. You could use spray paint for this, but I am doing this in a not very ventilated area, so I'm not going to use spray paint. Also, I don't know how good spray paint would look on cardboard, so I don't know, it just seems like it might look a little cheap. So I'm just using black acrylic paint. This is exactly what I used for my Proton pack as well, so of course we want them to match. The thing you want to do when using a brush to brush your paint on is make sure that all the strokes are going the same direction. It just makes it look a lot nicer once it's dried. And it's okay to go the other direction to get paint where it needs to go, but the final coat should all be in the same direction. And we'll let those dry. Now the two pieces that we painted are dry. Well, it looks like they're mostly dry. I was really trying not to get paint on my hands. Above this switch, there is also a button for Intensify. So I am going to make a hole there for that button. So now we can go ahead and replace the switch, this time without the on-off indicator. Just make sure that you put it in correctly so that when it is in the down position, it's off, and when it is switched to the up position, it turns on. Now we can take the wire and put it through the hole we made. And then I also have this little button piece, which is connected to a wire and ends like this. And you can get these from like anything that at the store that says try me and it has a button you push. That's what this is. Even like fairy lights will have these a lot of times where you can push the top to see what they look like. So that's what this came from. My plan is to use this button on the inside, but I will need something that goes through this hole to actually push the button. And that is where a clicky pen comes in handy. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this clicky pen apart. I've just taken the back piece of that clicky pen out. I do need to cut it down to the right size, because as it is, it's way too long and it's not gonna work. We only need it to be about half of what it is right now. So I'm going to cut this down. It did fly away from me a little bit, but I found it. So to get the little pen piece attached to the button is going to be pretty simple, actually. Fill this up with hot glue until it's just a little bit overflowing. And then we're going to press it onto the black button and hold it there until it starts to stick, just like that. Now we're going to use another thing that I use quite often. This is Bondic. It's not really a glue, but it's used kind of like a glue. It is liquid resin, and it stays a liquid until you hit it with a UV light. So I'm just going to put a little bit just around the edge here where the two pieces meet. And then I'm going to use the UV light on the other side to cure it so it hardens. And it only takes a couple of seconds, really, like 5 seconds or so. That should hold it on pretty well. So now if I take that little creation and put it through the hole right there, now we have a little button and it should work. I am going to use some hot glue all the way around the outside of this plastic piece, and then that goes through the hole and onto the cardboard. Now the only thing left for this button is this end. I don't need this piece. I'm going to cut it off. So now I've got my two wires connected together, and I will mark one of them with silver to make sure I know, one side from the other. And now these wires can go through one of the other holes that we made, and those are the little electronics within our control switch. it's now safe to close this thing up. We can put it all back together, or if you didn't mess up like I did, you can now put it together. And now we can connect it to our main gun body. Make sure you feed those wires through the correct holes, and then this piece should go right about here. So let's just go ahead and get some glue on here. Use your image as reference here. I think I got it at just about the right angle there. So far we are here. Now before we start working on the handles and all the gadgets and things that go on there, we are going to get the lights to work first. I want to make sure that they work before I do all this because I have to run the wires through all of that. So yes, we're going to get the lights working first and then put the rest of it together. I've added some notes to my printout here just showing what color lights go where. I just watched some videos of this in action and just located the lights. So I've got some LED lights. We are going to power this setup with a single 9-volt battery, but we are going to modify this. This part right here, we need to snip and actually splice these wires onto the wiring in here. I also need to modify this on-off switch so that instead of this making it turn on and off, this will make it turn on and off. So first things first, we'll just snip the end off here. And then we are also going to kind of pop this thing off of here, and I want to see what it looks like on the inside. Oop, there we go. Okay, that piece just popped right out. The piece the battery goes in. Let's see if that slides out of there. It looks like it will. Yep, okay, so the whole piece just slides right out of the casing. So now we just have the switch as well as the battery connection. It should just be a matter of taking this switch off and rewiring it to our new switch. I'm not sure where to connect these. I'm not sure which one should connect to which, so I'm just going to guess at this point, and if it doesn't work, I'll swap them. We need to put a resistor on one side, otherwise it overloads the LED and it destroys it. These are the resistors you are going to need. It is the 330 resistors. We've got an LED, a resistor, and you just hook the resistor to one of the sides of the LED and then the wire over here to the other side, and it works. So now the power is hooked up. Make sure none of the wires are touching, and let's turn it on. Nothing happens. Let's turn it off, take the battery out, and swap these wires. I was probably wrong about which one was going on which side. So now when I flip my switch, it turns on the LED light. Now that we know we have our connections right, we're going to go ahead and twist them together, and then we are going to put a little bit of hot glue on them right where they're connected, just so that it holds those wires together. The alternative to this would be using solder, but hot glue is easier, so that's what I'm doing. And now we can take some black electrical tape and just wrap it around where we've connected our wires. So with the connection done, it just looks a little bit like this. And now we'll do that same thing to this side. And with those connections secured, I also like to put them together and then wrap another piece of electrical tape around. When I'm all done, the connection just looks like that. As we do this, we are going to need to know how much wire we need for each light. So I am going to cut my tubing to size. This is the handle part, and according to our specs, it goes 7 1/4 inches out of this. So from here out, we're going to measure 7 1/4 inch, which brings us to right here. And now we just need to cut this tube off right there. I drew the line across as straight as I could, but it doesn't really matter. This side is going to go in there, so we're not going to see it. So, you know, the flush side is what's going to actually be visible. For this, I'm just using a small hand saw. We can now have a look at, that's going to be our handle. And the cool thing about this is if we take a look at our pictures, our reference images, right here, this is where it's connecting the hose that goes to the actual Proton pack. And I actually recognize this, and I know exactly what that is. You guys probably don't know, but I am also a musician. And this is a microphone cable. It just doesn't have the Nutric brand on it, but yeah, look, this is the piece. It just unconnects just like that. I have this old microphone cable. It's already banged up and I'm holding part of it together with this electrical tape, but I'm going to use this for the Proton pack, and the wand or particle thrower will be able to disconnect from the Proton pack if need be for whatever reason. I'm just going to cut off a bit more than I actually need. So this is the side I want right here. This is the male connection, and the female connector right here will actually be connected to the Proton pack. In fact, I could probably run power from this to my Proton pack, because right now the Proton pack is running on 4 AA batteries. But if I could hook it up to just a 9-volt and power all the lights with the one 9-volt battery, all I would have to do is flip that switch and the Proton pack lights would come on as well, which would be very cool. I had some of this foam right here that kind of has a split in the middle, so I could stick the wire and this in the end, which is going to make it easier to go into this tube and stay together so it's not rattling around. And then I'll also use a little bit of tape to hold it together. Something just like this should work. And then we just go ahead and put that cord through the tube. Now when I get close to the end here, I am going to put some hot glue around here before I push it all the way in, just so it'll hold it in place. So now it just looks like this at the moment. Now instead of putting a hole in here, I'm actually just going to cut a little bit off of it on this end. I figured that would be a little bit easier. The wire can come along this way, and then we can stuff a little bit more foam right here in the end. This time it doesn't need to be the circular foam, that doesn't matter. We just need a piece big enough that will just stuff right in the end. I save foam from, you know, packaging and other stuff that I get just in case I need it. And then we can just push it in, and then when it won't go any further, we can just cut the end off. Now I'll put a little bit of glue here so that the foam stays. I'll go ahead and put that cable through just like this. We'll flip it over, and that's right where this is going to sit, right there. And we don't need quite that much cable here, so I'm going to actually trim it down a little bit, just that much. We can go ahead and paint this part. It doesn't have to be all the way, but I'd say from about here over, we'll paint the whole thing black. And I'm just going to paint this with the same black. It's called permanent black acrylic. Now for the most part, this is dry, and you can see they did wrap it with black electrical tape here on both sides actually. Just grab some black electrical tape and start somewhere over here. We're just going to stretch it and twist it around all the way onto the connector piece. And you can make it look a little bit sloppy too, because that's kind of what it looks like in the prop. And then we cut it off and end up with something like that. And then this piece can go back into the gun box, and hey, it's starting to come together. That's starting to look like the right thing. I did notice that I can see some of the top of this when it's in there. I can see it through these holes here in the top. Now, instead of painting it and waiting for that to dry again, I'm just going to use a marker. There we go. So just the top half of that colored black. The bottom part doesn't matter. And now we can connect this to the inside. So we are going to put some hot glue right here on the foam part, and then we're going to push that back all the way against the back wall, and then we're going to flip it over and push and make sure that it stays straight as it dries. Go ahead and put some more hot glue just around the outside of that tube in here to make sure it stays. Now we can let that harden, and as for this cord right here, we don't need that at the moment, so I'm just going to sort of roll it right there off to the side. Before we actually start putting our lights inside of this, we just need to make sure that we have enough power and everything works properly. So I've got all of the different lights that we're going to need. We need to take each light, and you can see it has the long prong and the shorter prong. We're going to bend the long one over. The shorter end here is negative, and the longer end here is positive. So it's all running off of one 9-volt battery. This was tricky, and the switch does work too. And I know that this looks very confusing. It would to me too if I hadn't built it. So I also sketched out a diagram of what I did, and I'll include a better looking version of this in the download. And as you can see, we have two currents. This we'll call 1, and this one we'll call 2. The first one has red and yellow lights, and the second one has blue and white lights. We needed 2 separate currents because the blue and white lights require more power, so they were pulling all the power from this current, and I couldn't get all the lights to work at the same time. One thing I do want to accomplish is for the tip of the Proton or particle thrower, I want the lights there to flicker when I push a button. So I already have the button mechanism in there. As for the flickering of the light, I figured we could use these little candles because they flicker, and if we had one of those in there with a brighter light, a blue light, that might look kind of the same, especially if there's sound effects with it, which there's not going to be for this one, but you can play it on your phone or something while you do this. I have one plugged in right here, and you can see that it is flickering. So I'm gonna have to use that LED even though it's white, which that's fine. I think I'm gonna also hook up a blue one as well so that you've got the blue one going and then the white one flashing, so it still kind of gives that look, I guess. And I already know what I've done right here with the different resistors is correct, so I can finalize this and make these connections here permanent the same way we've been doing throughout this whole thing. It's always going to be hot glue and electrical tape. So now that I have all of my lights planned out and I have my plans, I'm going to go ahead and start stringing these lights through. So the first part I'm going to focus on right now is this little square window right here, and this is supposed to be yellow lights, so I have little yellow LEDs we're going to use. It's supposed to kind of fill up and go down like this, but I don't have the means to do that right now, nor the knowledge, so right now it's just going to be yellow. In that little window, we do want kind of like a plastic cover over that, so plastic packaging comes in really handy for that. It comes with everything you buy, basically, and it's a really good idea to save this stuff because we can use this to make little miniature windows and other things when you need something plastic and transparent. So I'm just going to start by cutting out a little rectangle. We can cut it down to the right size afterwards. And this is the packaging that my toggle switch came in, so I got it pretty close. So, I mean, this is gonna work. I got it real close to the size it needs to be. This just goes on the inside, which is going to be a little hard to get on camera. It's just going to go right on the inside. You can kind of see the shine on it right there. And from the reference images, you will see that this little window does have lines down it, just a whole bunch of horizontal lines down. So I am going to just draw them on the window with a Sharpie using a ruler. And then I'm confident in my skills to probably do the majority of the rest of them without the ruler. When it's all done, it should look like this. Just to make sure that those lines stay and are never smudged or anything, is you can take a piece of just tape and put it on the side that you drew on. So yeah, that makes it so that, you know, it's never going to smudge. You can also add a little bit more tape onto it like this, and that can help it stay in place when we put it over the window part right here. So then with it taped in on the inside, you can see it just looks like this, just a little window with a bunch of lines across. Of course, our yellow lights will go behind that, so we're going to need something to sort of mount the lights onto. I am doing this a little bit out of order. I had already gotten my red light in on this part, so we'll just ignore that, pretend the red light's not there, and we're gonna go ahead and start with the yellow lights. You could use styrofoam, but this is a lot sturdier and it's gonna work better. Also, it's black, so we're not gonna have a bunch of white styrofoam inside, and maybe people will see it through the venting. What I'm using is EVA foam, and this is used in cosplay a lot to build like armor and other stuff like that because it's really easy to work with. Each light has a negative and a positive. The longer leg on these is the positive and the shorter one is the negative, so we'll just keep that in mind. And what we want to do is puncture 2 holes for each light so that they will go through the foam. With the holes punctured in there, I can just slide the light down and then we get these coming out the other side. And I do want to set these up pretty evenly spaced. So something like this should work. We should be right here. Now we can just trim the foam down to size. And I am actually going to mark one side so that I know which side is positive and which side is negative. And now we're going to bend these connections. So the longer legs, which are the positives, I'm going to bend toward this. So these just get bent toward that. And then the other ones, I'm going to bend the other direction. So now we have our negative connections here and our positive connections here, and they're bent away from each other so they won't touch. We also need a length of wire, and we'll need to strip the wire down so that we have it exposed long enough to string through either side. And then we also need to strip a little bit on the other sides so we can supply power to this. So we know that the red wire is where we have run our resistors. So that is going to go on the positive, and I'm just wrapping it around a couple of times and then moving on to the next one and wrapping that one around a couple of times and so on until we've connected all 3 of these together. So it should look like this, and then I'm going to go ahead and do that to the other side as well. So this is how it should look on this side. And before we make that permanent though, let's hook this up and make sure that it works. So I'll just bring this back out, this foam where I set everything up, turn my power on. We can see that these lights are coming on, but I need these to come on. So if I touch these connections here, you can see that they do come on. It's a little flickery, but that's because I'm just holding it there with my hands. Now we can make those connections a little bit more permanent with some hot glue. And you can see all I'm doing here is putting the hot glue on top of those connections to hold them there. And then we can do that on this opposite side as well. I'm going to also put some black electrical tape on it just to make sure nothing else touches those connections once we've got everything in the gun body. And I'll do that on both sides. And with everything all taped up, we should be here. We're really just going to put some hot glue on one side and stick it right along the side of the window in there. According to our chart here, we have a red light that goes right here. So on our replica, it's going to go right here. You can also see that there is a tube, a little tube coming out sort of underneath where that light is and where this green cable is going. So I'm going to install this light first, and then the wires are going to run kind of back and into this gun body. This tube is going to hide that wiring. We can run the wires through here and out the bottom and then back into the gun body right here. And since I saved my paper template here, I can see where those pieces are supposed to go. So all we're going to need to do here is puncture a hole here and here so that we know exactly where things go. Puncture this hole where the light's going to go all the way through. And then from there, I can puncture another hole into the gun body right here. And that's going to help us run our wire all the way through. Straighten out the wire and let it go through here and out that side. That actually wasn't as finicky as I thought it was going to be. And then this end of the wire can go in here. So we're just going to use everything that I've said so far to wire this up. You should be comfortable with this now. The longer one is where the capacitor connects to, and the shorter one is where the other one does. The way I'm doing it, the red wire is the capacitor wire, so we connect that. And then the black wire is the not capacitor wire, so we connect that. So now we can hook that up to our battery and test that. Yep, the red light comes on. And now, of course, we need to use a little bit of hot glue and some black electrical tape to protect the wires. We need to make this hole a little bit bigger so that this little red light will go into it. So I'm just enlarging that hole a bit. So right there, looks pretty good. Whenever we make changes like that, it's always a good idea to test the lights again. And there we go, you can see that red light turning on over there. I am going to put a little bit of glue around it because I want it to stay where it is, and I'll just clean it up afterwards and do a little touch-up painting. Now we should have that red light in there, right there, and then the 3 yellow lights in the window right there. And now we can connect the wires for the yellow lights to the red light as well. So we're going to supply current to that one. And it's just a matter of taking the red and black wires that are connected to the red light and attaching them to the red and black wires connected to the yellow lights. And then we also need a wire coming away from that so we can continue the current on this way and hook it up to our other lights. So now we should have something that looks like this. I've got the red and black wires from each of these lights connected here, and then I've got this extra wire that's also connected there coming out this way so we can continue our string of lights. As you saw, we can run this off of a 9-volt battery, but once I close this up, it's going to be really tough to get into, and I don't want to have to worry about changing this battery, so I have a solution. I picked up this battery. It's a pale blue brand. It is a rechargeable 9-volt battery. And as you can see, one of the connections is a USB-C, so I mean, most people have that for their smartphones anyway, so you'd be able to just plug that in and charge the whole thing up that way. And so my plan here is to get this battery hooked up right here, and then on the bottom of the gun box, we will have this part exposed. So you'll be able to plug it in with either one of those connections to charge it. And there's the little indicator light right there, so when you plug it in, it'll be red and it'll turn blue when it's fully charged. So I'm just gonna get it lined up where I want it, and I'm going to trace it, and then I'll just go ahead and cut that out. So now the battery we can hook in right here, and that is how we're going to power everything. I'll take my hot glue gun and get this glued in. So once we hot glue that battery in right there, we'll be able to charge everything up, and the battery is going to stay put. The next lights we're going to focus on is the blue lights inside. I'm going to use 2 blue LEDs for this. We are going to have to use some foam like we did last time to hook the lights into. You could either just paint this black, or if you have some black foam, you can use black foam, which is what I'm going to do. Because we are putting 2 lights through here, we are going to need 4 holes. Now we'll finish up this just the same way we did the other foam one. In the end, for reference, if you need it, this is what it looks like. If we power it on, you can see that it does work, as well as our other lights. And these will go kind of on the side of that inside tube there, because we want blue light to come through the vent right there. It does look a little bit harsh, and I kind of want to diffuse that light around inside there. So I have an idea. I do have some of this. This is just a folder. So I'm going to cut a piece off big enough to cover these windows from the inside. I also have this. It is just foam that you use when packing, and I'm just going to also cut a square out of this. And then we'll put that down there as well. Now let's try those blue lights again. That actually looks a lot better. So I've just got a piece of foam, and I've made myself a little plastic folder to put it in like this. And then that is going to go on the inside behind these vents. So with the folder open, I'm going to put some hot glue on this side of the foam and on the other side of the foam. And then I'm going to close the folder and kind of squeeze it so that it closes up. Now we've got this piece that we can shove back there and then glue one side of it down. So this side is the side I'm going to be gluing down, basically right there. So I'm just going to drop some hot glue in there, put this on top of it. I think that worked out pretty good for being a little bit of an afterthought. And now that I think about it, a little piece of foam over this to have a little diffusion of those yellow lights is probably a good idea too. All right, with all of that done, let's see how the lights look. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. before we actually glue this in there, we still have some things we need to be able to reach in there to do. This white light, which is connected to those blue lights, and then the blue lights at the end there, we will need to get in there to do that. So we'll just start with the white light. This is not the flickering one, this is just a white light. We can also just bring our template back out. This is the part we're looking at, so we can just use that for now. It goes right here. We have a little button and then a white light above it. So the circle above right here is the white light. Just like we did with our red light, we're going to make a puncture right there. We do need to enlarge it. And we're just going to keep making it larger until the white light will fit in that hole. Of course, before you make anything permanent, go ahead and hook that white bulb up right there. Flip your switch on, and you can see everything is on, powered up, looking good. We do need that current to continue, so I'm going to just hook some more wires up here so that the red and black can continue past this bulb. Now I've got my white light all hooked up and ready to go, so it can go through that hole that I just made. And then we just want to put some hot glue right behind that light. As you can see, I am using these little paper clamps to hold the wires away, so that helps a lot since we're working in such a small area. And now we can go ahead and glue the blue lights in, and you can just kind of situate them wherever you think it looks best. Add some hot glue. While the glue is still hot, you do have the option to move it a little bit if you want to. So from the inside it looks like that, and on the outside you've got this. Now we're going to take a look at the actual gun nozzle. So I'm going to be using this shipping tube, but there is also a transparent tube that goes inside there. I was lucky enough to find this transparent tubing at a local secondhand hardware store, and it was only $1 for this giant tube of it, and it fits perfectly inside of this tube. So basically it's just gonna come out the front like that. I'm really not sure. I'll look and see if I can find something like this online for you guys, but it looks like it's called Polyamide Composite Shaft, Lake Region Medical. So I guess this is for medical purposes. I'm not quite sure what it's used for, but I'll see if I can find it. If I can, I will link it in the description box or something similar for sure. Now the thing with this part is there is like a little trigger or button on the particle thrower where it's in like this, and once the button is pushed, it pops out a little bit like that. So I need a mechanism of some kind that will allow it to sort of be spring-loaded. The tube you need should be 12 1/4 inch long, and then it should be about 1 inch wide plus however thick it is. So the inch wide is like so that the plastic tubing will fit in it. Now the plans say that this plastic tube is anywhere from 5 to 7 inches. So now I'm going to measure over about 7 inches, but actually I'm going to measure over about 7 1/8 of an inch just to be sure. And I'm marking this with a dry erase marker, and then it's just a matter of cutting where that mark is. And now that dry erase marker should just come right off, and I'm just using my shirt because I'm a slob. And there we go. We have our 7-inch piece of tubing, and that should fit right inside this tube pretty well. And now we can work on that spring-loaded mechanism. We will need a couple of springs. This is the big spring, so this is going to be on this side right here, and when the spring-loaded thing gets triggered, it's going to pop out like that. We will also need a smaller spring for the button. And in case you're wondering, the big spring here is just under 4 inches long. It's like 3 3/4 of an inch right there. And then it is just about 1 inch wide. I've got the setup in here, the spring and everything, just without the button. So it's going to sit like this, and when I push the button, it pops out like that. I think that's going to be perfect. So for the little spring button mechanism, all you need is the clicky part of a pen, and it needs to be rounded at the top, and then you need a spring. And all I've done is hot glued the spring to the bottom of this little clicky pen button. We also need a couple of pieces of foam like this, and I've also put a hole in my transparent tube. So what we're going to do first is put a little bit of foam just past that hole. And we're not going to be gluing anything in just yet because I want to make sure that it works before we make anything permanent. But we'll take the button part and put the top part through the hole and then kind of squeeze the spring in, and then we can close the other side off with more foam. So now we have this piece with a little button on it. So I did mess up a little bit on a hole over here I was doing. It was just a little too rough. So I flipped it around and I made a different hole here. You don't want bits on the inside like this, because when you get that, it causes too much friction inside of that, and the spring does not spring very well. And basically, the transparent tube is going to go inside of our cardboard tube. The button here is going to get pressed down and pushed through until it reaches that part. So now we've got our button right here, which when the spring is loaded in here and we push the button down, it should pop out like that. Not all the way, of course. Now we need something inside that's going to hold this spring really close. It needs to compress this spring quite a bit. It's got to be pretty compressed in there, and then it's going to pop this out. But you do want to make sure it doesn't pop it out far enough that it's going to show any of this other stuff, right? So about right there is probably good. We want this part of our spring to end right there. So I'm just going to make a little mark, and that's where the spring will be stopped inside the tube. And I do have these little yellow buttons that are just the perfect size to fit into these tubes. We are going to need 3 buttons. If you don't have buttons, you could use like a 1-inch hole punch type thing and some cardboard maybe. We are going to use this piece of cardboard folded in half. So basically, I'm just going to need this cardboard to be long enough that it comes up to that line that I made. We can just cut the back part of it off like this. And I'm going to glue a button right on top of it, just using some hot glue, and then the button goes on top. And that is enough to stop the spring from going any further down. Now, before we start putting this together permanently, something that's very important is we need electrical wiring going through this, because we're going to put lights in here. That's also another really kind of perfect part about using buttons for this, because they already have holes in them, and you can just thread the wiring through those holes. And the wiring also obviously needs to go through the tip of this. So we'll take our mechanism apart, and we can start with wiring coming through the tip. We're going to start there and just make sure we pull enough as we work our way through. We know that the foam works, so I'm going to put some foam in here, just like that, and then the wire is right in the middle of that foam, so it can go back and forth. I can make sure I have enough wire. Just remember that that foam needs to be right up, right beside the hole that we made for our button mechanism. And then I am going to put some hot glue in there to hold the foam in place, but I don't want to cover up my hole. As you do this, just make sure that it's not going to interfere with the button. Now we can put our button in. There we go. You also don't want the wire to go in the middle and interfere with the spring, so just make it kind of loose off to the side like that. Now we can go ahead and do the other piece of foam on the other side. So that just goes in there, and then we can put the glue just right on the inside of the foam here. And we will take the end of the wire and thread it through a button, and that button will go all the way over to this end of our mechanism. Now I'm going to take that third button and glue it to the top of the spring right here, so that I have 2 buttons kind of pushing against each other flat, and hopefully they won't turn and go sideways. Now thread that wiring through that third button and through the center of the spring. And let's see what happens if we apply pressure to these. It is still going in there. So I think I'm going to need to add some glue just around. So that seems to have helped. It doesn't look like that is going into the tube. Feed the wire through the last button. So the cardboard piece goes in, followed by the spring. We just needed a little more tension in there to allow more pressure to push on that tube. So the way I did that is I just took another piece of cardboard, a little bit longer than the one that's already in there, and then just push it in, and there we go. So now it's sort of extended this by a little bit. And if I push that in as far as it'll go, I am gonna have to trim some off, but I push that in as far as it'll go, and I can push my button, and it pops out just like it's supposed to, except it went a little bit too far, which means I need to put another hole up here that will catch this little button. All right, so here is the finished mechanism. I put a second hole here to catch that so it doesn't pop out too far, and perfect. Now to put it back in, you do have to do it two-handed. You push this in, and then you get that back right where it needs to be. So now this tube is actually going to go right here. So what I want to do is line it up right where it goes, and then I am going to trace it with a marker. Should be able to see this on top of the black paint, but yes, I can see it. That is our circle that we're going to pop out of this. I'm going to do that with my X-Acto knife very carefully, just a little bit at a time. And now you can take all the mechanisms out of this and paint it black. Make sure that the paint isn't blocking the holes we made. Once the paint dries, it looks like this, which looks a lot better. That button is a lot more hidden. And then this piece is going to go through the hole that we made here into the gun box. And then it's going to push over like that. But before we actually put this in here, this tube is actually this tube right here with the handle on it. And then also we have these pieces that latch onto it. You can see them here and here and there. I got a few different angles of them. Let's go ahead and make those pieces next and attach them to the barrel. Just like we have done all the others, we'll just tape it on, score them, and cut them out. And once that's done, you should have these two little pieces right here. So just go ahead and fold everywhere that you scored. And if you start tucking these flaps in, it is going to start taking shape. This piece should look a little something like this. Now let's glue it. And we're going to start right here with this flap. We'll take a little bit of hot glue and just put it right there. And then fold the whole thing around and glue that flap right there. Now from there we can do this smaller flap right here. So we'll take a little bit of glue, put it right there on that flap, and fold this piece over the top. So now we should be right here. Now this next one's pretty easy. This flap folds in and this one tucks around and in just like that. So let's go ahead and put a little glue right there, fold it and tuck it in, and then we should be right here. And there's one last piece, which is this little flap. So I'm actually just going to put a little bit of hot glue right here on the inside, and then I'm going to turn this and let it touch that hot glue just like this. And the final shape we should have is right here. And this should fit perfectly on your tube like this. Let's move on to this next piece, which is a little bit easier and a little more obvious how we do it. Fold wherever we scored Now we're going to glue it, so we'll start with the flap on the side here and fold it around and tuck it down just like that. Tuck these down like that, and then this tucks in right here. If it doesn't quite fit, you can make it a little bit skinnier. Put a little bit of glue on this flap right here. Fold these two in, and then tuck the glued flap in and hold it right where it needs to be to close this up. And you should end with a little kind of rectangle with a cutout here. Let's take a look at our reference images to make sure we are doing this correctly. So it should sit just about like this. So this comes down a little bit more, but just like that is how it should be. So I just glued this piece on, but I jumped the gun a little bit. That's why you see a little glue spot here. That's where I glued it. This one actually has a light right here on this side. And if we take a look at the template, you can see exactly where that light is supposed to be. It's the bigger circle right here. So if we lay that template over, we have two spots. And so I'm going to mark those with a little hole in my cardboard. It almost looks like a little robot with eyes. And according to my notes, the light right there is a yellow-orange light. So I am just going to grab a yellow-orange light, make the hole a little bit bigger, just so that this light is going to fit through. And I can pull it through that hole. And when it's right close to the end, I can put some hot glue just around there and get it to a good spot. And we are ready to connect this to the tube. Here's me from the future, just showing you. I originally had these wires going in through the tube, and then I realized I can't do that because it's going to block the transparent tube from sliding in and out of that tube. So instead of that, I've ran it through the back or the bottom part right here. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna glue this back on and fix, cover up the imperfections. Man, this is like the 5th mistake I've made. But hey, you know what? I'm learning as I go too. Now we just need a piece of foam we can kind of stuff in there. And then that foam is going to give us something to glue when we actually glue this to the side of the barrel. So let's just add some hot glue. And then we press it on. So now we have one part. The next part should be a lot easier because there are no electronics that go inside. And this one we are going to have to trim down a bit. So I've put some foam in there, and then I'm just going to draw where I need that cut to be on the foam. And that should make it easier for me to cut it out. So now when you put the foam in there, it should be at least somewhat shaped to that little curve. So let's put some hot glue on there. So in the end, this piece should look like this. Now we do need to paint these pieces black, but I want to make sure that our LED light doesn't get painted. So I'm just going to put some masking tape around the LED light, just like this. And then we'll just go ahead and paint it. Once this is all dry, we can then take off this masking tape, and we should have a nice, clean LED light right there. And if you need to, you can go in with a black marker and just fill in any parts that aren't quite right. And so in the end, it should look like this. And the wire comes out the bottom there, and we're just going to sort of run that wire underneath the handle part that we're going to hold on to. We've only got 2 more lights over here at the end. On current number 1, however, we have 2 yellow lights. One of them we've already embedded right here. So we've really only got 1 more yellow light right here, and then the 2 lights at the end. Let's go ahead and finish up the 1 yellow light first, because I think that will be one of the easier ones. So the last yellow light is right there. You can see it here and there. And that one I failed to put on the template here. I will fix that. For mine right now, I'm just going to eyeball where that is. It's looks pretty easy. I can see it right here on our images as well. So I'm just going to make my estimation and put my bulb right here. And we're using that same method we just did. Make a hole big enough for the light to fit through. Once your hole is large enough for that yellow light to fit through, you can go ahead and connect it and glue it in just like we did the other one. Remember, this light is here. It's connected to the first electric current right here, not the second one. So it goes right there connected to the 3 yellow lights. When you've got the light all wired up, we can put it through that hole, and then we can add some hot glue on this side, and then we switch it on to test everything. Looks like everything is working right. There's that orange light working as well. And now we can start making room for the barrel part of this project. So what I'm going to do is move all of the wiring over to one side. And then I'm going to take the barrel that we created. First goes the wiring, and then the barrel comes through the hole right there. And let's not forget about the other wiring that goes to the orange light. That's also going to come through, but it's coming on the outside of the barrel. And we want to keep that at the bottom of the barrel to sort of hide it. We're not going to connect this in yet. So let's go ahead and start with the orange light right here. I know that this cable right here is the blue, so I'm going to put that off to one side. That's current 2. I don't want that connected to the yellow one. So for now, we're focusing on current number 1, which in my case is right here connected to that orange light. So we don't need all of that wire that I had. That was just, just in case. I didn't know how much we would need. We really only need a little bit, so I'm going to trim down the one that goes to the orange light on the barrel, and then I will strip these and connect these 2 wires together. And this is the last connection, so there's no need to continue the current after this one. So now if we switch it on, there we go. So that light does come on right there. We are now at the very last part of the lights. This is going to be the white flickering light and the blue light in the very, very tip of our barrel. So to hook these up, I'm going to use a similar method as with the foam, only this time I'm going to use this foam just because it's already round and just the right size to go in this tube. So these lights are going to be hidden behind this piece on the barrel. So you can see there's like a metal ring basically around the barrel. The lights are in there. I've colored this tube with the silver marker that I have. It's going to be about 3/4 of an inch wide. So this piece of foam along with the lights will be hidden behind it. We're basically doing the same thing we did before where we poke the light through the foam. They will just go side by side like this. Now I've got them wired in. We're just going to make the connection and make sure they work. And they do. You can see that one is flickering a bit. And since that connection works, we are going to go ahead and put our hot glue on here to finalize it. However, we also have a button right here that we want to be able to push and make those lights at the end activate. I'm going to disconnect them from the current. So this goes to the lights right here, and this black wire right here leads to the button. I'm going to trim this down a bit because we're going to connect these wires in a certain way, but I don't need all that extra wire, so I'm going to trim them down. Connect the main current to the current that would go to those lights. However, we're going to go ahead and connect the black cable to the black cable. So that's the one, that's the negative, the one that does not have the resistors. But then instead of connecting the 2 red wires like we normally would, I'm going to separate them with the 2 black wires from the switch. I'll connect one black wire from the switch to one side of the red, and then I'll connect the other black wire from the switch to the other red wire. So now there is a break in the current, and the way it gets complete is when the button is pushed. It activates it. So if I switch everything on, all of our lights come on, we've got this light right here, and if I push the button, it works. If I let go of the button, it stops. Since all of that works, let's go ahead and finalize this last connection right here. So it's looking pretty good now, but you will notice when I flip this switch on, That white light is overpowering. It's like it's like looking at the sun. Luckily, I had these laying around. They're like little caps that you would cap off where you put a screw in so it would hide the head of the screw. But I'm sure there are things that can cap off LED lights as well that you could use. But you'll see if I put that on top of that overpowering light, it still glows, but now it's not overpowering anymore. And I'm going to do it just really simply with a little bit of hot glue inside of that. And then I'm just going to press it on top of the LED. And that should be good enough. Yep. But now we need to attach this piece because it's just kind of rattling around. We're going to make sure that all the wiring is out of the way and not on this side. Place it where you want it and make sure that you can push the tube all the way back. And that's going to be important because we are going to push 2 screws into the side here, into that tube to hold it basically where it is. Just make sure that it's straight and how you want it first because you really can't undo this. Also, there are a couple of things that go on this side of the template. We have this big piece right here, so I think I'm going to put a screw in here and probably here under this to hide it. Puncture a hole right here, and then I'm also going to puncture one under this part. So if I now open this up, make sure all of the stuff is out of the way. This thing is straight and the spring is all the way this way. Open that up and make sure I puncture also the tube. I'm actually going to just release the spring, so this is going to be a little bit easier. And I can start putting the screw in to hold it. And you want them to line up with the holes you made in the tube, of course. And once they do, you can screw them in and maybe get just the tiniest little bit of foam in between here so that this handle stays pretty straight. All I really needed was a piece like this folded in half. And then we just tuck that in there. And now we are almost ready to close this up. The first thing I want to do though is I did make this hole a little bit big right here. So I'm going to take another little piece of cardboard, snip it so that it opens up like this, and we're just going to wrap this around there. And I'm going to glue it on right here so that, well, I guess it's going to hold this right where it is so it doesn't move back and forth. And then also it's going to fill in that gap. And all I need to do is put a little hot glue in there, put my piece of cardboard in. So now here we are. Now I can go ahead and push this piece in and arm that spring. So the spring is now armed in there and it pops out just like that. It's a little hard to push that button in, but I'll probably mess around with that a bit. But it does spring load and it looks pretty good. Now we can finish up with this, and then we can add all the details to the outside. We just need to get these lights exactly where we want them. And then I'm going to drip some hot glue in there. I just want to get it right around that foam to make sure it stays. And you don't have to do it like all the way around, but you do want to do some. So this is probably good. Just a little hot glue on each side like that. I've already kind of colored the tip of this tube right here just to see how it would look. I used my silver paint marker and it looks pretty good. That's going to fit over this and hide the part that has the lights on it. An alternative though, if you want to, this is the empty roll from just Scotch tape. You could actually glue that, paint it silver and glue it there, and that would work just fine as well. However, I will use this, and we need about 3/4 of an inch. And I'll use an X-Acto knife to very carefully cut that and try and do it cleanly. So now I am left with this piece, which looks silver. I do need to touch up the part that I just cut. We'll take a look at our plans and you'll see there's this weird piece here that's sort of like sticking out from it, which is this piece. So we just want to go ahead and cut this shape out. We will need another piece of that black foam. I'm going to line the longer end up just with a flat edge, and then I'm going to trace the rest of it on there. So with that traced here, I'm just going to very carefully cut that shape out. You can use a combination of both scissors and X-Acto knife. Just as needed, do what you can to get this cut out. So after messing with that a bit, this is what it ended up looking like. And we'll attach it with just a little hot glue. So here we are. And now we can color that silver. And if you want to, you could glue that into place. But mine's pretty tight on there, so I'm not going to worry about it. And for the very tip of mine, I have this. And it's just one of those little things that, like when you go to a 25-cent machine and you get like a little ring or a necklace or whatever, little toy of some kind. But it fits perfectly right on the tip. Like I don't even have to glue that down. It fits so snug it's not going anywhere. And it looks pretty cool when the lights start to flicker inside. It kind of lights the whole thing up a little bit. So that is pretty cool. Now the next thing we're going to do is focus on all the little details. Going to the right side of our gun box, we have these details. This big square here is actually a heat sink for your processor in your computer. And I just ordered this. It was a pack of 4 and it's almost the exact size. And then we have a few circles that we need to cut out. Some of those circles will cover up this screw. So we do need to cut out all these circles now. And I happen to have these 4 different hole punches that are almost the right size. I'm going to pop out these from cardboard. If you don't have the hole punches, you can just do your best with scissors. I have right now 3 of the larger ones and 3 of those medium-sized ones. These are going to make up this piece right here next to the heat sink. Another example or angle would be this image right here. So I'll just start by putting a little bit of hot glue and gluing them together. And then we'll put some more hot glue on there and glue the last one on top. And then we'll do the same thing for these kind of medium-sized ones. And then next we'll take this smaller one, put a little hot glue on it, and glue it right in the center of that larger circle. The next piece we need is this smaller circular piece right here. For this, I have 3 of the small circles of cardboard and 3 of the extra small circles of cardboard. And we're going to do the same thing we did here, just on a smaller scale. In the end, we have this piece. So we can start putting these pieces on. For the heat sink, I am literally going to hot glue that on. Stays on pretty well. For this piece, since there is a screw under it, I'm going to sort of get an idea for where that screw is by sort of pushing it down onto the screw, and then I can flip it over and you can see a little mark where the screw is. So now I can take something, doesn't matter what it is, and sort of indent that mark right there. And so now that fits over top of the screw pretty well. So let's go ahead and glue that on there. And now we can use this as reference for where that smaller one will go. Add a little glue and just try and get it placed as close to where it should be as possible. So now we're here. To cover that one up, I'm probably going to use this. It's just a little rubber plastic cap. I don't remember exactly what it came from. I have a box of just random stuff. You could make some more circles to cover it up or however you want to do it. This is just what I'm doing because I had this found piece and it is easy to use. So the side of my particle thrower ends up looking like this. Now let's flip it over and focus on the opposite side. And this side just gets some more of those circles. We're just going to make these the same way that we made the one on the other side. And don't forget that the top circles on these are kind of are like off center. And so we should end with this on the left side of our gun box. Next, we're going to add this little tube right here. You can also see it in this template right there. Unfortunately, there are no size specifications for this, so we just have to sort of guess. I'm going to guess it's about 2 inches. This is the same tubing that I used for the handle and the barrel. the tube kind of goes around this square piece, so there's a cutout in there. So we just need to make a couple of measurements real quick, and I'm just marking where it goes to the square here, and then we'll probably want to go about this far down. So with my rough measurement drawn on there, I'm going to go ahead and use an X-Acto knife, cut the cutout out so that this will fit around that square. Here is my final cut, and this will slide on right here. We do need to cap this off. I've got a 1-inch hole punch right here that's going to cap this off. It needs a hole in the center of it though. So I'm just going to go right about to the center. I am also going to grab some foam and put some glue on the edge, and then this is going to slide into the main tube right here, plugging up the tube. Next we can go to this piece. I'm going to put some glue around the edge there, and then that is going to glue right on top. And then I'm going to put some hot glue just around the edge, just like this. And when we paint, we're going to make that look like welding. Now, with our particle thrower upside down, this tubing is going to go right there, covering up those wires. I'm actually going to take another piece of foam and glue it in. And then we can actually put glue on the top of the foam and the side of the foam here. And then we can place this exactly where we want it. But we will need to put some hot glue on the outside as well. And again, this is going to be painted to look like metal welding. So we should be right here. And now we have another tube right here in the front. You can see it right here as well. So we can see the placement, we can see the rough size of it. This is 2.5 inches. So I've made my mark. Now I just cut this tube in half, and it's just going to go right here. But first we also need to cap this off. We're going to do it the same way we did the other one. This one does not need a hole. We'll want to put foam on both sides of this, and then on one side we will cap off, and then we can add some glue to the bottom of it and place it right beside the barrel. And then we will also put glue all around the outside for welding. While we're over here, let's go ahead and put our welding hot glue around the barrel as well. So I'm using just found parts. Hopefully you can find similar pieces and just follow along, because they're actually super random things that I can't, most of them I can't link in the description box. The first thing we're going to do is this piece, which is kind of like a big thick bolt, I would say. For this, I am going to use an actual bolt just because it looks like it's about the right size, about the right shape. We will need to put a hole right here, and basically it's going to drill into the end of this tube, which only has that thick wire in it that's coming out, so you're not going to have to worry about any of the electronics on the inside when we do this. I will start by puncturing a hole right where I want this to be. Make that hole quite a bit wider. I'll just put some hot glue right around the outside of that hole and attach the bolt, and then we can screw the bolt in. You may also have to hold the nut there in place as you screw this in, just to make sure it doesn't move. So there it is. I'm not going to screw mine all the way in. I'm going to leave it kind of out a little bit like that. I think it looks a little more like the prop. Next, we're going to focus in on this button right here, and it's just below the white light. I have another one of these little rubber caps. If I can figure out what this is, I will link it so you can get these. Otherwise, you will have to make one out of cardboard or foam. The EVA foam would probably be a really good option for that if you can get it cut into a nice circle. However, this is red, so I'm going to paint this red before I attach it. You could use red paint. I have this top-notch oil-based paint marker, which is nice because apparently the oil-based stuff goes really well onto plastic. I really like how that turned out looking because it doesn't look perfect. It looks kind of dirty. So we'll let that dry. And as it's drying, we have this next piece that's on top right here. And you can see the side view right here. So it's kind of like another little bolt. I found this little tiny little plastic tube. I couldn't tell you what this went to. Maybe a small spool of thread of some kind. And then I also have this red plastic cap. I don't know. I honestly don't know where these came from, but I thought if I put them together like this, it kind of has that shape of the bolt. All I would have to do is paint it. I'm actually taking some of the EVA foam and I'm just gonna push the foam inside of this tube, trim it down. I will just put a generous amount of hot glue inside this cap, and then I'll put this tube in the cap as well, right in the center. At the moment, it kind of looks like a little mushroom, but once we paint it, it won't. Use the reference image for placement, put some glue on the bottom, and place it where I want it. So this one should look like this. Now our little red button should be dry enough. I am going to, you guessed it, fill it with a little bit of foam. So I'll put a little glue on the inside, a little foam, get our images ready so we can see exactly where it's supposed to be placed. And now we can glue it on. So now here we are. Our next little random thing that we need to place is actually up here by this yellow light, just a little black button. I'm going to use the same thing that I used to cover up the white light. I'll just put some hot glue inside and then glue it right where I want it to be. So we end up with this. Now the next piece we're going to do, we are going to have to make it, and it is this part right here. You might find that familiar because we already made one on the Proton pack itself right here. It is this Clippard part right here. You can actually get a real one of these, but there's no point if we can make our own. So we're going to just make one exactly like this piece. To do that, we have our last part of the template right here. And although I did go over this in the Proton pack video, I'll go over it again very briefly here. We can go ahead and cut this part out, tape it down to a piece of foam, and then we're going to very carefully cut this out. Now we should have a piece that's shaped like this. We are going to need some more of the tubing, and you want to cut it down so that it is just the size of this piece right here. And we're going to do the same thing we did on this tube where we put foam in both ends and capped it off on one side. This time we do want it to be pretty flush on the top. I'm not going to add the extra glue around to make it look welded. Next, there is a cap on this. You might be able to find something like a marker cap or some other cap that could fit on that. I'm just going to go ahead and use the same thing I used last time for the other one so they match. And this is one of those little rolls from dog poop bags. I've just trimmed that down so that it's about the right height as the cap. I know that it's not as wide, but it's going to be fine. Stuff this thing with foam. Trim the foam down to size. I need one of the very, very small circles that we cut out. And we'll just put a little bit of glue on there and cap the top of this off. And then the bottom of that gets some hot glue and we stick it to the very center. This is what we end with right here. Add some hot glue to the bottom of that, and that is stuck to the middle of the foam piece that we cut out. So this is that Clippard piece, which is going to go right here. Before we glue this one on though, we need to paint it because it's going to be really hard to get in between the body and this side. We don't have to paint it all the way to the very top or anything. We can just paint it right around just below the rim of the larger tube. And yes, you should probably also paint the foam just to make sure everything is the same shade of black. But we do need to paint the top part silver. I'm going to use some masking tape so that I can get a nice straight line across here. So you can see I just masked off this bottom part here, just around the top, just by a little bit. I'm just going to take my silver paint marker and I'm just going to paint the entire top of this. You don't have to use a paint marker. I just find it easier and it dries faster. And once that's all painted and dried, we can go ahead and take off the tape. And then it should be a fairly nice thing. It looks like I got some paint in there, but it looks pretty good. Now we can put some hot glue on the bottom of this, and then we can glue it on right here. It should line up with the barrel. We're ready to paint this thing, so I'm gonna go ahead and finalize this bottom piece. I'm gonna hold it in there, and I'm going to hot glue it closed around the edges, kind of basically make it look like welding in the end. And while the glue dries, we can go ahead and start painting all those cardboard pieces black. This is also a good time to just touch up anywhere where you can still see hot glue or cardboard. Just go ahead and paint that black. We can also paint this piece we made on the top black. And we can go ahead and paint the heat sink, but you know, it's never gonna look completely black. I don't mind it looking just kind of dirty. And the very last thing we can paint black is right here. Just be careful of the yellow light. You don't want to accidentally paint that black. So now, with everything painted, it should look like this. There are only two other things we need to put on here. This green tube or wire here, and this red one right here. You can see the red one is connected using these two gold pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that one first. So for those pieces, I did get these two hose barbs right here. I'm gonna show you the tag on it. So if you're going out to find them, this is exactly what you want right here. 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch hose barb. Now I'm going to take my Deco Color Premium gold foil marker, and I'm just gonna color this gold. Once these are dry, the next thing we need are some wires or hose. I just got these at secondhand shops, really easy to find. We're gonna focus on the red one first. So go ahead and just snip one end off of it. We're not gonna be using this cord for anything. And then it's going to attach to one of these pieces that we painted. And it's going to go from this piece to this piece over here. I'm going to keep my tube out so that the spring is not loaded, so that it can comfortably be attached with this piece out. I'm gonna say about right here. If I'm wrong, I've got plenty more. Now we need to attach the hose or the wire, whichever you're using, to our gold pieces that we painted. I'm going to use a combination of hot glue and electrical tape. So I'm just gonna put a little hot glue right there and attach these together. It's not gonna do much, but it's gonna help hold it while I tape it. In fact, I can put a little bit more on there since it's going to be covered in tape anyway. You won't see the glue. Feel free to use as much electrical tape as you need to get this fastened on. So in the end, it should look like this, and we'll do that to both sides. Once we're done, you should have this. We will take a look at the barrel from the side. One end of that needs to connect right here. I'm gonna do that with some hot glue. Now this next end goes right on the side of this piece. So we'll put some hot glue there, attach it, and hold it until the glue is 100% dry. This might be kind of spliced in, so you might see things that I haven't done yet. Ignore that. So we just glued this on here, and it keeps popping off. The other one, this one, doesn't seem to have that problem, but I think it's just gluing this plastic to the painted cardboard is not very reliable. I've popped a small little hole right there, and then I also put a small little hole on the other side of this right here. I am going to take a paper clip and clip part of it off, put that through right here. I'm gonna put some hot glue right there on top of the hole, and then I am going to make sure that that little piece goes in to that hole. It is now in there with the paperclip piece connecting things. And if you have any problems with this piece popping off, I have not, you can do the same thing there. And when the tube is armed, it looks like this. And if we pop it out, it just pops out like that. Now we can work on the green one. And that one, as you can see, is attached right here, and then it wraps around and over and right on top of this piece next to the red light. For this, we will need a couple more pieces, as you can see right here. This is a 3/8 by 1/4 inch splicer. And again, our gold marker, and we're just gonna paint them. For this piece, I want the smaller end to go inside of the cardboard. Right here where we made that hole, we're gonna make that hole bigger so that the smaller piece will fit in to that. Same thing up here, we're gonna have that smaller piece fit in. The only part we're gonna need gold on is the thicker part, and maybe a little bit into this smaller part just in case any of it shows. So first, let's just work on making those holes big enough so that our pieces can fit in to those holes. We're basically doing the same thing as before, but we don't need quite as much of this cord, this wire. We just need enough so that it kind of wraps over about like this. To attach these, we are going to put some hot glue inside, and then we're just going to take the wire and put that inside as well. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. And with this, one of these will go in this hole and the other one will go right there. So it's just gonna kind of sit like that. Before I actually put them in the holes though, I'm gonna put some hot glue in each one to help hold it in there straight. Now I'll just put some inside of this tube as well and put that in there. So now we should have this. And now it is time for the labels. Just like before, these labels were originally created by pseudodon7 at gbfans.com. I scaled them to the right size and aged them appropriately, and now they're ready to go for this project. They are very tiny. You might as well just use your scissors. There is no need to go all out with a Cricut for this one, because most of them are just rectangular anyway. So just trim off all of that white space around them. I did print these on sticker paper, by the way. You can print them on whatever kind of paper you want. You could use plain paper and then glue them on. However you want to do it should work. And I do apologize for all this extra wasted paper, especially sticker paper. That's not cool, but I mean, we only needed some small stickers, so I mean, it was kind of unavoidable. I guess you could take these and make your own stickers, or if you got kids, give them to your kids and let them make stickers. So here are all the stickers you should have. And if we take a look at the plans, there is a whole page on the decals or stickers. So you can put them where they go. I'm gonna go over it as well right now. We're gonna start with what I believe is going to be the most annoying one, and that is this little red triangle. Because if you use sticker paper, we've got to peel the backing off of it to get to the sticky part. So I'm going to hold it with pliers or tweezers, whichever one you want, and then I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to try and just get in between the top and bottom layer of the paper. And there we go. We can peel the back off of it, and then again with pliers or tweezers, hold it where you want it, and use something else like maybe a pencil or whatever you have to lightly put it down where it goes. So it's going to go right here, kind of parallel to the handle on the top of the gun box. Next, we're going for the Activate and Intensify stickers, which we're going to have to peel the back off of in a very similar way. The Activate sticker is going to go right above our power switch right here. Next, we'll do Intensify, and the Intensify sticker is going to go right above our button to make the tip flash. And then we should have Activate and Intensify right here. So Activate and Intensify. Next, we will do the Slow Blow sticker. This one is going to go right below the red light here, right below the red light. Next, we can do this one that has all the different like kind of semicircle shapes on it. This one is going to go parallel to the yellow lights inside, right beside them right here. Next comes this little red danger sticker. This is actually going to go right here, right below where we started our green cable. Now we can move on to these two little stickers, starting with the one that kind of looks like an email icon. So these are going to go here. These little holes that you're seeing are where the little tiny switches would be. So pretend they're there and put the stickers where they go. But it should look something like that. What we have left is a white danger sticker. as well as this little black sticker with all the red kind of circuitry looking stuff on it. The danger sticker is going to go kind of right here, and then the circuitry one is going to go off to the side there. So in the end we have this. And the very last sticker is this Clippard sticker, and it goes around this tube right here where we painted the silver on top. What I'm going to do to get this on, it might have been easier to do this one before I put it all together here, but what's done is done, and what I'm going to do is use my pliers in the back and then get it where I want it, and then I can pull the other part of the sticker around because I want it to say Clippard facing outward, like toward us, like this. I want it to say Clippard facing outward, like toward us, like this. So I'm gonna stick one side of that down, and then you can use a butter knife or a pencil or something, but we're gonna sort of tuck the back in, and here it is. Now we have one last thing to attach, the grips. So this is an ice scraper, and this is the part that you hold while you're scraping your ice. To get this foam handle or grip off, I'm going to use scissors because I can get underneath this part really easily. I assume there's probably glue in there somewhere that's holding it on, but I could be wrong, so I'm just going to keep going and cut as straight as I can. And to my surprise, there is absolutely no glue in there. So we do need two of these. I'm just going to kind of open it up right here, and I'm just going to cut it in half lengthwise. There. So now we have two little grips. One of them is going to go here, and it is a little bit too long, so I will trim it down. And then the other one is going to go here. So I'm going to trim both of them down to 4 inches. On this side, we do need to make sure that we hide that wire underneath the grip. And then we also need to be able to reach this little button here to pop our transparent tube out from here. And I'm going to hot glue this on. Now the next one is going to go on the bottom right here. So I'll put some hot glue on here again, and then we will place it right underneath. Okay, that actually feels really nice. It's really comfortable because it's foam instead of plastic, so that's nice. And I was a bit inspired by this tape right here that they're using. It makes it look old and like something that somebody put back together, which I love the look of that. So I couldn't find any army green stuff, but I did find some friction tape. It's black, but I think it's going to be pretty apparent that that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do that to both of these. You might even be able to use bookbinding tape if you get the right kind. And I'm going to start over here on this side. I need to make sure that I don't cover up that hole, but I am going to put some friction tape sort of around this. So I'm just going to do some there, and then I will wrap it around here, but skip where the button goes. Then I'll cut that off so it looks like this. Then I'll do a little bit more on this back handle as well. In the end, we come to this. The last thing we need to do here is make it look old and like old metal. But we're going to do this exactly like we did it before. I'm using some silver paint, in this case my silver paint marker, and I'm using a sponge, and we're just going to sort of put some paint on here. We sort of dab it around the edges. You can see it starts to look like metal. And you don't want to overdo it. We just want to do enough to make it look like old metal. I probably put a little too much here. If you do that, you can go back over it with a little bit of black and, you know, tone it down a bit. So let's go ahead and just do that around like the edges, places where the nicks and scratches would be. You could use a sponge for this. You could use different sizes of foam or sponges if you want to get into like smaller areas. I know that around the edges of these circles, you can really see the metal sort of coming through. So now if you compare it, this does look a lot like the movie prop here if you do compare it. As for where we put the hot glue for welding, we can just put a little bit of a metal look to that as well, sort of like a painted metal welding look. So it looks like this really is starting to look like it's welded together. And you can put some scratches on it, sort of like just quickly and lightly going over like this. This one I probably did a little too dark, so if you do that, you can go back over it with some black, like I said. There are some parts you can tell that it's cardboard if you get up close like that. So I am going to have my hot glue gun handy to sort of cover that up with hot glue and make it look like it's been welded instead. I'm going to show you how you can make your wires also look old and dirty. Basically, we're going to try and make it look like this, and you see how it's got like oil. It almost looks like oil on it. Super easy to do. We're just going to take some black paint and put it around here. And then if you think that's too dark, you can just take a napkin and sort of wipe some paint away. And then you get this dull kind of red instead of the bright red, and that's what makes it look old. I'm going to do the same thing over here on the green one. And so my green wire ends up looking like that, pretty grimy. For this little bolt right here, you can use the same kind of technique. Just put a little black on there and then wipe it away, and then it looks kind of old like that. And once we're all done with the details we made in here, this is basically finished. We can flip it on. There, that's what it looks like when it's on. You can make the tip glow. But now we need to hook this up to the Proton pack. We can take a look at our reference images, and you can see there's a little metal piece. The ends kind of curl in, and it looks like it slides into another metal piece. So that's what I was kind of looking for. We can also look at these templates, but it doesn't really show much of what the sliding mechanism looks like, but it's pretty clear that it's one metal piece that slides into another metal piece. After searching online for a while, I found a lot of people use Dixie cup attachment things. It's where the cups attach to the side of the water dispenser, but apparently those are very hard to find. I tried to look for them. I could not find them. So I found something else that I think is going to be perfect. This is for a sectional modular couch. So this piece right here with the grips is going to go on the Proton pack, and this piece right here that slides into it is going to go on the particle thrower. So we're looking at it from the bottom right now. This piece will basically go right here in the center. I'm going to put a little hot glue on it right here just so that it is held in place. We will just need 4 small screws. You don't want them to be any longer than 1 inch. I am just going to put some starter holes right here, but then we're just going to screw the screws in. And at first, we don't want to screw them all the way in. I just want them to be a little more than halfway, I would say, maybe 2/3 of the way in. That's what I'm doing. And then once we get to that point, I'm going to put some hot glue around where I'm screwing in, maybe on a couple, maybe 2 or 3 sides. And then I will screw it in the rest of the way, and the hot glue is going to help it stay in place and not move. So we need to do 2 things to our Proton pack. So we're going to bring out those old Proton pack plans that I linked in the description of my Proton pack video. So you want to download these, or at least just a couple parts of it. First, we need the gun mount box. This is where we're going to be mounting our particle thrower. So we just need to look at this because it is at a little bit of an angle here. But let's bring the Proton pack out. And the gun mount box is going to be right here. You can see it's sort of to the front and at a slight angle. So we want to mimic that. I'm going to hot glue where I'm going to put some hot glue on these 3 pieces that are sort of raised. And then I'm going to go in with some screws as well and screw this in. So first of all, I'm going to do the hot glue. That's going to help hold it in place while I do the screws. And at this point, it's probably a good idea to just make sure that the gun actually mounts onto it, and it does. Looks pretty good and sounds kind of cool too. The screws just need to be long enough to go through here and into the gun mount box right here. And again, I'm going to stop a little bit before the screws all the way in there because we're also going to do some hot glue. So these are just a little bit up. Now I'm going to take some hot glue and sort of squeeze it in that hole, and then I need to screw the rest of the way in. And I'm going to do that for each one of these 4 screws. That should be on there pretty sturdy, and once the hot glue is dry, you can slide your particle thrower onto the proton pack. But we're not done. There is one last step. Bear with me. It is the last thing we have to do, and then the proton pack and particle wand are all finished finally. We need the tube or cable that's going to run from this end of the particle thrower into the proton pack. So what you want to do is open up the Ghostbusters I didn't get a picture of this one, and you want to select Ghostbusters Afterlife because I think that's where they have the best quality images of the proton pack. But you can see right here, this is where the tube goes. It's going to go right in to the base. I, of course, have my mic cable, which is funnily what they actually used to hook this up. And then I also have this, which is another thing that they actually used, as if I'm looking at it correctly, and it is split tubing. You can put wires through here, and we're basically just going to run our mic cable through that. But the first thing we need to do is make a hole in our proton pack. Obviously, without destroying it, we're going to make a hole in this panel right here. It just needs to be big enough for this piece to go through. I'm going to start the hole using my awl. Let's just make that hole a little bit bigger. Okay, now the wire will go in. So let's take a look inside the proton pack. When I made this last year, I did make it so that you could open it up and get to the electronics. There's also a battery pack here with an on-off switch. I might go ahead and replace this with another rechargeable pack. But yes, I do want to get to the hole I just made, which is on the other side of that cardboard wall in there. So I'm just going to go in and make another hole on the inside of that cardboard wall. And now I should be able to feed this wire through. But before I do that, I don't need all of this wire. This is really long. I just need enough for this to attach, come down, and wrap around into here. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off right there. And then I can just feed it through. Now I have access to that cable. So now I'll be able to attach my electronics between both the proton pack and the particle thrower. We can close this up now, and we can turn our proton pack to the side. From here, it's really easy. I'm just going to take that split tubing and run the wire through it. And it looks like we will need to cut the split tubing down a little bit. I'm going to use some of this fabric grip tape to just attach these pieces together. This is where we are at this point. Since it is kind of sticky on the outside, I'm going to go over that a bit with some electrical tape, just like this. Should be good. So now that's good to go. That's going to connect to the particle thrower. And the last thing we have to do is get this piece to look a little bit better than it does. So I have cut an inch-long piece of cardboard tubing, and I'm going to color that with my silver marker. And we only need the outside of this to be painted. You don't need to do the top or the bottom because we're not going to see those parts. So I realized I just lost some footage, actually didn't record the footage, but basically I took that silver tube and glued it to the hole and then ran this wire back through it. So, I mean, it's not much that I lost, but you see what I did there, right? And then this tubing should fit right into this cardboard tube. Now you will want to obviously paint that hot glue black, and then we can make it look like it's been welded. And then the last thing we're going to do is the same thing we did on the other end of this tubing. We're going to connect this with a little bit of this grip tape and then also some black electrical tape. And then our brand new particle thrower we just made can then hook up to the pack, and we can run a current back and forth between this and the pack. And the particle thrower can latch onto the pack just like that. Here is a close look at the particle thrower. I am extremely happy with how this whole thing came together in these past couple of videos in the series. I really love the sliding mechanism in here. A lot of you are probably thinking, how do we wear it? Because on the back of this, we have nothing. That is called an Alice frame. So you can buy one. They're pricey, but you can buy an Alice frame to attach to the back of this, or you can wait for the next video in this series, which is me creating an Alice frame for a very, very small fraction of the cost. But if you are like in a hurry and you really need to wear this thing like tomorrow, then you can get these straps, and I will link these in the description box. These are the actual straps for an Alice frame, and you can just kind of like pin them with like a screw or something onto the back of this and just wear it. And then when the Alice frame video comes out, take those out, take those off, and use the Alice frame instead. If you made it all the way to the end of the video with me, you're a Wizard Harry. Give it a thumbs up down below if you did like this video, and subscribe if you're not subscribed for more Harry Potter DIYs, Ghostbusters DIYs, the next one in this series. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.